Welcome to the deep dive. Let's get straight to it. Have you ever noticed how, a walk in the park can sometimes just unlock a new idea or maybe help you see a problem differently? Today we're diving into that connection, the real link between nature and your creativity. Think of this as your shortcut to understanding how your surroundings can seriously impact your ability to think innovatively, whether that's for a work challenge, an artistic project, or just, looking for a fresh perspective.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we've really sifted through a fascinating collection of research. We're focusing on a big review from last year. What makes it so powerful, I think, is that it pulls together just a huge range of studies. You've got
Yeah.
the hard numbers from quantitative stuff, the more personal experiences from qualitative studies, even some really detailed case studies.
And the scope is massive, isn't it? This review looked at how nature influences creativity in all sorts of places, like deep wilderness, rural areas, even right inside our cities. Plus, it covers different kinds of creativity, arts, work, how kids play and learn, even those standard creativity tests. So yeah, a really broad look.
Right. And it's very timely information, too. The review pointed out something like, 80% of the studies they looked at, published in just the last 7 years, that huge recent surge, it really shows how much we're focusing on creativity now and, the growing interest in figuring out how we can all boost our own innovative potential.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit.
Right.
First off, when this research talks about creativity, what exactly are they measuring? It feels like, well, it can mean a lot of different things.
That's a really crucial question. And yeah, the review highlights that creativity definitely has many sides. One key distinction they often make is between divergent thinking and convergent thinking. So, divergent thinking, that's all about generating lots of different ideas, being original, flexible, elaborating on things, like a brainstorm, basically.
Right, getting all the possibilities out there.
hmm And convergent thinking, on the other hand, that's more about taking all that information and sort of synthesizing it, finding the one best, most logical solution.
Okay, so the initial explosion of ideas versus focusing in on the one that works.
Precisely. And while both are obviously really important for the whole creative process, the research we're digging into today, it tends to lean more towards measuring that initial spark, the divergent thinking part. Now, if you zoom out a bit, the review also mentions Wallace's classic four-stage model. Remember that. Preparation, then incubation.
Incubation, where things just sort of simmer.
Exactly. Then illumination, the aha moment, and finally evaluation, where you check if the idea actually works. And you can see how both divergent and convergent thinking fit into that whole journey, right, at different stages.
Yeah, that makes sense. You need that divergent burst first, but then convergent thinking has to come in to actually refine things and make them, well, real.
Right. And it's also worth remembering, like you said, that what we even call creative can really shift depending on the field. Scientific breakthrough just looks very different from, say, a new piece of music. Science might be about problem solving, finding new knowledge.
Well, art is more about expression, originality.
hmm And then there's this whole debate. Is creativity specific to certain areas? Like, are you a creative writer but maybe not a creative scientist? Or is it more of a general skill? The thinking now seems to be moving towards recognizing, yeah, there are definitely domain-specific parts to it. Like, there's this thing called the Creative Achievement Questionnaire. It actually measures your creative achievements across 10 different areas: arts, science, even like cooking.
Huh, interesting. So defining and measuring creativity is actually pretty complex. Okay, so that's creativity. Now, the other side of the coin. What does this research mean by nature?
Yeah, so in this research, nature is defined quite broadly. It's living things, plants, animals, but also non-living things like rocks, geological processes, even the weather. So we're talking green spaces like forests and parks, and also blue spaces, oceans, rivers, lakes. And here's a stat that honestly is quite concerning. People in many developed countries, they spend on average about 90% of their time indoors.
90%. Wow. That's a staggering amount of time inside.
It really is. And, maybe unsurprisingly, this heavily indoor lifestyle seems to go hand in hand with rising rates of mental health issues. But on the flip side, the research consistently shows that being in natural environments can actually reduce both mental and physical health problems and give our cognitive functions a nice boost. But, and this is important, not all nature experiences are created equal. It seems like lush, biodiverse environments, the ones with non-threatening wildlife, they tend to be the most restorative for us. There's even research suggesting a kind of minimum dose of nature, maybe around 2 hours a week, seems particularly beneficial.
So just walking down a busy street with a couple of sad-looking trees probably isn't going to cut it compared to, say, spending real time in a forest or by a lake.
That seems to be the idea, yeah. The quality matters and how immersed you feel in it. Okay, so we have a better handle on creativity and nature now. The big question is, how do they connect? What are the main theories explaining this link?
Right, this is where it gets really juicy. The review highlights something called attention restoration theory, RT. Can you break that down for us?
Absolutely. So RT basically suggests that our ability to consciously focus, pay attention to tasks, solve problems, what they call directed attention. It's like a muscle. It gets tired. If we use it constantly, it leads to attentional fatigue. We just feel mentally wiped out. Now, nature comes in because it allows for something they call soft fascination.
Soft fascination. I like that. Sounds kind of gentle, almost like mindfulness.
It is, yeah. It's this effortless kind of attention we give to things that are interesting but not like demanding. Watching clouds, listening to leaves rustle, that kind of thing. It's the opposite of hard fascination, which is that intense focus we give to really stimulating stuff like, doom scrolling on our phones or watching an action movie.
Okay, so hard fascination grabs you, but soft fascination lets your mind wander a bit, recharge.
Exactly. Hard fascination doesn't really give our directed attention a break. But soft fascination, the theory goes, lets us recover from that fatigue. And that recovery frees up mental resources for other things, like creative thinking, especially maybe during that incubation phase we talked about where ideas are just percolating.
So the gentle, undemanding quality of nature gives our focus muscle a rest, and that mental refresh makes it easier for creative ideas to bubble up.
Precisely. And building on that, there's another idea called the alternating attention orientation model. This suggests that when we're in nature, our attention might first get caught by something outside us, then drift inwards, maybe thinking about a problem, then drift back out again. It's this sort of gentle back and forth that's thought to be really good for creativity. There's also some interesting work linking mindfulness, which, yeah, is very similar to soft fascination and different kinds of mind wandering and how they predict creativity together.
It really sounds like nature provides this ideal space for a mental reset and maybe a gentle nudge towards new thinking patterns. Okay, theory makes sense. What about the actual evidence? When we look at specific creative fields like arts and design,
Yeah, the review found a pretty strong positive connection there. Lots of interesting studies. For example, pre-service teachers in a Japanese garden, they felt more creative afterwards. Another one found secondary students wrote better creative pieces after a walk in the bush. Primary kids wrote more evocative poetry in a forest compared to the classroom. Even design students, their proposals were rated as more creative when they worked in an urban green space.
wow, so it's not just a feeling, it actually impacts the output.
Seems like it. One study even found that just the sensory experiences in campus green spaces, they particularly boosted creativity for design students who started out maybe less innovative. It's like nature helped unlock something.
That's fascinating. Like it levels the playing field a bit, potentially.
Could be. And the qualitative stuff really backed this up. You had creative professionals in like Denmark and the UK saying nature was absolutely vital for their curiosity, new ideas, flexibility, even just energy and serenity. They talked about the wildness opening things up, the unpredictability being inspiring. Teachers saw kids getting more immersed in music, more expressive in art and writing in natural settings. Even just using natural materials, leaves, twigs, that kind of thing seemed to lead to more relaxation, playfulness, imagination compared to, standard craft supplies.
It's almost like nature becomes a co-creator, doesn't it? But you mentioned the review found a contrasting view, too. Something about Iceland.
Yes, that's a really important counterpoint. A qualitative study in Iceland found creative professionals there actually ranked things like family, education, cultural support as more important for their creativity than access to nature. It's a good reminder that, this link isn't always the most important factor. Culture and context really matter. Maybe, as the review authors suggested, those participants just didn't have the same learned appreciation for nature as a creative spark, perhaps like those teachers before they experienced the garden.
Right. Context is key. Okay, what about the workplace? How does nature play out in professional creativity?
Generally positive there too, according to the review, though one study didn't find a significant link. Some quantitative work showed nature exposure at work seemed to broaden cognitive processes, which boosted creativity. This held across professionals in Taiwan, Indonesia, Canada. Interestingly, people high in openness to experience seem to get a stronger boost.
So your personality might influence how much nature helps your work creativity.
Seems plausible. But a longer-term study found something slightly different. It found that being physically active in nature boosted vitality, energy at work, sure, but didn't directly predict creativity levels. In that study, things like job autonomy, having control over your work and workload, were actually bigger predictors of creativity.
Okay, so just having a nice view might be different from actively engaging with nature during the workday.
Mm,
And those core job factors, control, manageable workload, they're still super important for workplace creativity. Makes sense.
absolutely. The qualitative insights were interesting too. Professionals working in like a rural archipelago setting, they reported the calm environment really helped with experimentation, imagination, reflection, taking a break, looking at the sea, and suddenly an idea pops up for a problem they were stuck on. Even just informal chats outdoors or commuting through green spaces were mentioned as helping creativity and problem solving.
So it can be both an escape and an inspiration source for work, but yeah, definitely part of a bigger picture.
Mhm.
What about kids' play? That seems inherently creative. How does nature fit in there?
Yeah, the review highlighted a strong positive link here, mostly from qualitative observations. The one quantitative study they found showed preschoolers playing in environments with more natural stuff. Sticks, rocks, mud had better creativity, problem solving, and focus.
That just feels intuitive, doesn't it?
Yeah,
A pile of sticks has infinite possibilities compared to a plastic toy that does one thing.
exactly. And the observations from nature kindergartens really drive this home. These open-ended, slightly ambiguous natural settings, they fostered really dynamic, imaginative play. Kids used materials they found for building, exploring, making art based on nature. And it seemed like their creativity grew the more connected they felt to the place. They actually preferred the natural zones over manufactured playgrounds for creative play just because of the variety.
The possibilities, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the review also noted it was important that the adults were supportive of the kids' autonomy, letting them lead their own play. That seemed to really let creativity bloom.
Right, so it's not just being in nature, but having the freedom to mess around with it, explore on your own terms. That fuels the spark.
Oh,
Okay, so we've hit specific areas like art, work, play. What about those more general creativity measures, divergent, convergent thinking? What did the review find there?
right. So for divergent thinking, the idea generation part studies generally showed significant positive links with nature exposure, but there were some mixed results too. One study found lower childhood nature exposure was linked to missing subtle sensory stuff and lower adult creativity. Interesting, huh? Indoor settings with natural elements, like plants, they often led to better creativity test scores compared to purely artificial rooms.
So even bringing a bit of nature inside helps.
Seems like it, yeah. Though results were a bit mixed when they looked at specific things like plants versus window views versus like green paper. Different measures of divergent thinking responded differently sometimes. One really cool finding: exercising in a park boosted brain activity linked to creativity more than indoor exercise. And this is interesting. Viewing nature indoors improved divergent thinking compared to city views. But when people were actually outdoors, both natural spots and busy urban spots showed similarly high levels of divergent thinking.
Wait, really? So just being outside, even in the bustling city, might kickstart that idea generation phase. That's surprising.
It is a fascinating wrinkle, isn't it? Maybe just the act of being outdoors has some benefit there. Now, for convergent thinking, that focused problem solving, the review generally found increases in performance, especially after more immersive nature experiences.
Like those wilderness trips you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. Multi-day hikes, canoe trips. Several studies found significant jumps in scores on the remote associates test. That's a common convergent thinking measure after those kinds of trips. Same for long-term outdoor education programs. Even a forest therapy workshop improved RAT scores, and it seemed linked to people feeling less mentally confused afterwards. Although results were mixed when studies combined wilderness with a specific creative task, like songwriting. Maybe the demands of the task itself became the bigger factor then.
Okay, so for digging deep and connecting ideas to solve a problem, it sounds like a solid dose of nature, especially the immersive kind, really helps clear the mental fog and boost that convergent ability. And finally, what about just how creative people felt? Their self-perception.
Yeah, definitely a positive link there too between nature exposure and self-reported creativity. For instance, more nature contact in childhood, especially forests, predicted higher adult openness to experience. That includes imagination, curiosity. People also just reported feeling more creative after visiting urban parks or woodlands compared to a city center. And some analysis suggested that the why mattered. When people went into nature for intrinsic reasons like solitude, stress relief, and focused more on themselves while there, they were more likely to feel that creativity boost.
Hmm. That connects back to that idea of nature as a space for reflection and restoration, doesn't it? Okay, we've covered a ton of evidence. So how is nature actually doing this? What are the mechanisms at play? The review mentions several possibilities, right?
Absolutely. One big one seems to be just the opportunity for solitude. Being alone in nature can increase self-awareness, let new insights surface. You get that gentle flow between observing the outside world and your own inner thoughts. Solitude seems to facilitate that. Plus, it might satisfy our need for autonomy, which is also linked to creativity.
Makes sense. Fewer distractions, more mental space for your own thoughts to connect in new ways.
hmm Another potential mechanism is appreciating impermanence. Nature is always changing. Seasons shift, weather patterns move, things grow and decay. That constant flux can spark that soft fascination we talked about, maybe some awe, curiosity. It encourages present moment awareness because things won't be the same tomorrow. That unpredictability can be really inspiring.
Like nature is a constant source of new things to notice and think about.
Exactly. And then there's that powerful combo of relaxation and inspiration. So many studies mention people feeling both calm and energized in nature. That calm state seems crucial for creative thinking. And feeling relaxed but also refreshed, it sort of loads the batteries for idea generation. The vastness, the limitlessness some people feel in nature. That might encourage wilder ideas, broaden attention.
So it calms the analytical mind while sparking the imaginative one. Cool.
Pretty much. And we can't ignore the simple fact that being in nature often means less tech exposure,
Yeah.
especially deeper in nature. All that constant digital input can lead to cognitive overload. Getting away from it lets our brains recover, frees up time and mental space for reflection, imagination.
That digital detox effect could be huge, actually.
Could be. And finally, there's just the inherent creativity of nature itself. Natural materials, patterns, systems, their direct inspiration. For art, technology, even just play. Think biomimicry or kids building forts with branches. Nature provides endless creative prompts.
Nature is both the muse and the playground. Yeah, powerful stuff. Now, the review did touch on the quality of this evidence, didn't it? Any limitations we should keep in mind?
Yeah, always good to have that balanced view. A strength was that many experimental studies use solid, validated creativity measures, but limitations, sure. Relatively few used randomized controlled trials, the sort of gold standard research design. Very few studies followed people up long term to see if the creative benefits lasted, and many relied on simple before and after measures without strong comparison groups, so it's a bit harder to be 100% certain nature was the only thing causing the changes seen.
Okay, so the overall trend looks positive and promising, but definitely room for more rigorous long-term research.
Yeah.
Got it. So we've gone deep. What does this all boil down to for the listener? What are the practical takeaways, especially if you want to give your own creativity a nudge?
Well, I think the main message is pretty encouraging. Making even small efforts to get more nature into your daily life, it really holds potential to enhance your creativity across different areas, work, hobbies, just problem solving. You don't necessarily need, epic wilderness treks. A short walk in a local park, maybe tending some plants, even just having more green in your workspace, it could all help.
So it's about finding those accessible little connection points we can actually weave into our busy lives.
Exactly. And it's worth experimenting too. See what kind of dose works for you. Maybe a quick 10-minute green break helps unstick you, or maybe you need that longer weekend immersion to really spark big new ideas. When you are facing a creative block, maybe try intentionally spending some time in nature. Maybe alone, maybe leave the phone behind. And think about the type of thinking you need. Brainstorming. Maybe a varied, stimulating natural setting helps. Focused problem solving. Perhaps a calmer, more tranquil spot is better.
Tailoring the nature dose to the creative task. That's a really practical tip.
So yeah, to wrap up this deep dive, the research pile is growing. And it really points towards a genuine, positive link between engaging with nature and boosting creativity in all sorts of ways. And those potential reasons, solitude, appreciating change, relaxation plus inspiration, the tech break, they offer fascinating clues about how nature works its magic on our minds.
It really does make you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How much potential creativity and innovation we might be leaving on the table by being so, well, disconnected from the natural world so much of the time.
Which leads to that final thought for everyone listening. How could you intentionally weave more nature into your routine? Not just for well-being, but as a specific strategy to cultivate your own creativity. What's one small step you could maybe take, even today, to connect with nature and just see what happens, see if it sparks something new for you? Definitely something worth pondering.